One of my clients, let's call him Raj, he's a 40-year-old IT professional and he's got a monthly salary of 1 lakh. It should be a comfortable life for him, right? But in between endless EMIs and impulsive purchases and some very bad investment decisions and poor planning, he is barely making it from paycheck to paycheck. And on top of it, to make things worse, he lost his job and his family is struggling. Does this sound familiar to you? Stick around with me in this video and I'll tell you 13 serious financial mistakes that are committed by salaried people in India and how you can avoid them. Starting with the number 13. Whenever there is a festival sale or smartphone sales, then it is very tempting to upgrade your smartphone even though your older phone is working very well. And now you know how things are when festival sales happen. It is so tempting. This is what Raj did. He got into a 12-month EMI to upgrade his phone when the festival sale was happening, even though his old phone was perfectly working fine. The pressure to keep up with other friends and colleagues who are upgrading their gadgets is so immense that you succumb to it. But if you cannot pay upfront 3 times over for whatever you are buying, then you should really consider whether you need it or not. Relying solely on your EPF for retirement is another mistake that many salaried people commit. The EPF is a good tool, especially for retirement. However, the inflation erodes the purchasing power of money, and EPF is not enough to get you over inflation. And therefore, you have to explore other options which can beat inflation so that you can build a sufficiently good retirement corpus. But there are other options in mutual funds, in tools like NPS, which you can use to beat inflation. Raj had thought that his EPF would suffice, but what he did not factor in was the healthcare cost. You know, medical inflation is rising by almost 14% in our country, and that's a big factor when it comes to healthcare expenses. Number 11 is a classic mistake that many people are doing. And what they do is get into traditional life insurance policies. Now, most of the people, they buy traditional life insurance policies in order to save taxes. But what they don't understand is that it is so expensive and it offers very minimal life coverage. Most of the people, you know, you have a relative or an acquaintance who comes and pressures you to buy a traditional life insurance policy. And in order to appease them, you get into that. However, at that time, you're not thinking enough of whether you're doing good for your own finances or not, because you're locking yourself into a product which is 20 or 25 years tenure and giving you only 4 to 5% returns. Raj paid 50,000 rupees yearly for this traditional life insurance plan, and he was getting only 4 to 5% on it, and he was getting minimal life coverage. So neither the investment part nor the insurance part is sufficiently covered by this product. And therefore, you should look for a term insurance policy which is cheap and which offers you much larger coverage. And the remaining portion of the amount that is saved, you can put into mutual funds for the long term so that it can give you inflation beating returns. Procrastinating your tax planning and waiting till March to do your tax planning is another classic mistake. Normally, you would wait till the HR tells you to submit your investments in either January or February, and then you don't have time, and then you get into suboptimal investments just to save your tax. However, if you had planned earlier, you could have done those investments in smaller chunks of money over the entire year, and you could have opted for good investments like ELSS or NPS, depending on your tax plan, to provide you a good tax benefit as well as a good tool for wealth creation in the future. Our hero in this story, Raj, invested in a ULIP, unit-linked insurance plan, just to save tax, and he didn't look into the details of the product. But then he regretted that he has to pay a very high fee for the product, and he has been locked into that product for a long number of years. People falling for get-rich-quick schemes is such a growing menace these days. You name it, there is Forex, there is crypto, there is all sorts of share market tips or CFDs. And some of these things are actually illegal in India. But because of this lure of getting rich soon, people fall into these traps. And tragically, unfortunately, even the most educated people also fall into these traps. Remember, get-rich-quick scheme is a myth. If you really want to build wealth, you have to invest in and keep it for a long period of time. That is how wealth creation is done. Let's look at Raj once again. He booked an international vacation on his credit card to please his family, and because of the pressure of his colleagues and friends who were doing it. He was expecting a good annual bonus, and he was thinking that when I get my annual bonus, I will repay my credit card bill. But in fact, he received only half of that amount because the company said that we are cutting back because the market is slowing down. So this is a classic mistake. You don't spend for your current expenses based on your future income. If you're buying a property, a home to live in, it is always better to have those buy versus rent calculators and understand where you are placed, especially if you are in tier 1 cities like Mumbai or Bangalore, where the cost of buying a house is immensely high and renting is definitely more economical. Now, buying a house is a very sentimental thing, and so financial calculations may not always help in these matters. However, you can always explore your options. Like, you could move into the suburban areas where the housing would be cheaper, or maybe you could move closer to your hometown without getting too much impact on your salary, and then you could enjoy your housing over there while being close to your family. So it is good to explore all the options available before us before you commit to a huge investment in property. Underestimating healthcare costs is one another classic and big mistake that salaried people do. Like we discussed before, medical inflation in our country is rising by almost 14%. And so when salaried people depend on their employer's group insurance scheme for their healthcare costs. However, it can happen in case of a medical emergency that your employer's group insurance may not be sufficient to cover the entire medical bill. And also, there is one possibility that when you are switching your job, your new employer may not be providing you with a healthcare insurance scheme. And in that case, what happens is that you have that gap in your health cover where you don't have a health insurance policy for yourself. If then you are forced to buy a health insurance policy for yourself, again, you will be buying it at a higher premium, and then you also have to complete the waiting period that is prescribed in the health insurance policy. So therefore, it is always advisable to have a standalone health insurance policy for yourself to supplement whatever the employer is providing you with. You can always have a super top-up plan if you want it to be cheaper in addition to the employer's health insurance cover. Mistake number 5 is a very deeply personal and emotional mistake, and that is overcommitting for your family's obligations. Raj's cousin was getting married, and her father came to him and said, "You are a brother, you are earning good. Why don't you support for her marriage?" And Raj, because he was so close to his family, was emotional and ended up paying much more than what he would have wanted. Indian families are close-knit families, and therefore committing to family obligations is necessary, and it is always helpful. When you are in need also, your family helps you. However, you need to be careful that you are not stretching yourself thin. You have to give priority to your own financial stability before you commit any kind of a help to your family. In this case, because Raj paid for his cousin's wedding, what happened was his long-term plans got derailed and he himself became financially unstable. Ignoring the salary breakup is one another mistake many salaried people do. They just look at the CTC and don't go into the breakup as to what they are actually getting in hand. When you look at your CTC, whether you are in the job or you are switching a job, and you need to know what you are getting after all the deductions and including the deduction for tax. Whatever comes to your hand at the end is the actual pay that you are getting. Now, if you plan your expenses based on the CTC, it is always going to be a struggle. Many salaried people in India are satisfied with their fixed deposits. Their fixed deposits may be earning 6 to 7% per annum. However, inflation in India is also 7% per annum. So fixed deposits are not beating inflation, or worse, they might also be underperforming against the inflation. So what happens is that your lifestyle, instead of getting enhanced because of your capital, is actually getting eroded because your purchasing power is getting eroded. And therefore, it is necessary to have inflation beating investment avenues such as stocks and mutual funds and gold in your portfolio. One of the greatest mistakes that you can commit as a salaried person is to become complacent and not upgrade yourself professionally. You have to invest in yourself professionally so that whatever certification, whatever courses that you can take, so that you can grow in your profession and your salary can increase. Maybe if not even in the same company, you can switch jobs and your salary can increase. Often it happens that if you become complacent, your colleagues who are working hard to upgrade themselves and investing in upskilling themselves are moving on with a higher salary, with a higher grade, and probably even moving to another company while you are stuck in your own old job. And finally, the most serious mistake of them all is not having a contingency fund. Layoffs are becoming so common in India, and therefore it is all the more necessary to have contingency funds so that you can fall back whenever you have an emergency. Now, 6 to 12 months of your expenses, you can save and put it aside where you can easily access it in the time of an emergency. Most of you would remember what happened during the pandemic, and for those people who lost their jobs or maybe even didn't lose their jobs, but their salaries were not credited, had a very hard time, especially if they did not have any contingency fund to fall back on. Many people had to rely on personal loans to even get by. That is a very tragic situation. So it is important to start with small contributions and build up your emergency fund. Your emergency fund should have 6 to 12 months of expenses. So there you have it, 13 financial mistakes, serious mistakes that salaried people in India commit. Which is the one that you can relate to the most? Let me know in the comments, and it will be great to have a discussion. If you're above 40 and your investments are scattered all over the place without any plan, and you are keen to have a proper retirement plan and a roadmap for financial freedom, then please comment financial freedom in the comments, and I will send you a free video tutorial which can help you to manage your money well and also build a financial freedom plan for you. Thank you and see you soon.